Knesset and to all of you that allows this huge, immense, beautiful conference to take place, and to all of us to discuss our idea. Now we have 18 minutes, all in all, to understand how Europe is going to change, why is it going to change, and how you will make it change. All of you, look, this is, I think, the first panel where I introduce three great friends of Israel who are not Jewish. It's the only one. Me, myself, I am. All the three of them. Look, they really deserve a big applause. And also, my first question is, how did you get such a big European friends of Israel? Please.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. Congratulations for this beautiful conference. I'm from Hungary, so I can give you the Hungarian perspective.
That's why I asked.
And I have some good news, and I have some bad news for you if it comes to Europe's relationship with Israel. The good news is that Hungary, led by a conservative right-wing government, Prime Minister Orbán is a true friend of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Hungary is the beacon of hope if it comes to God, homeland, and the family in Europe. And Hungary is Hungary's leadership may be the only one remaining strong ally of Israel in the European Union. So the good news is that you do have a reliable partner, a reliable friend, reliable ally in Europe, and that is Hungary and Hungarian conservatives, it's for sure. The bad news is that the landscape is changing dramatically in a negative way in Western Europe. The rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Zionism, what you described as Israelophobia, am I right?
Yes, you are.
Goes hand in hand with mass migration in Western Europe. And it's not only about the anti-Semite and anti-Zionist and anti-Israel protests on the streets and in the public voices in Western Europe, but it's also about that Western leftist and progressive leaders are passively or actively supporting. They are supporting this anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel rhetoric, and I tell you why. Because they want to gain votes. The left already left its previous blue and white collar workers as the original voters, and now they are trying to find new voters. That's why they are making gestures. That's why they are trying to get the sympathy of the migrants. Yes. Who are already there in France, in Italy, in Germany, in Spain, etc.
Does the fact that, for instance, your leader courageously decided to exit ICC brings him consensus or not? Because you're speaking about consensus now. Also, a gesture like this, being on the side of Israel, can bring consensus to a leader, or it is something that in the West, it is something that will never help a leader to grow. You have just 30 seconds to...
I can assure you that the Hungarian right will stand with Israel, and the sign for this is that Hungary withdrew from ICC, and Hungary stands up for Israel in the European Parliament, at the General Assembly of the United Nations, etc. But to answer your other question, I think, just in a nutshell, one sentence, I think from this perspective, Western Europe is lost. Sorry for that.
Do you share this opinion coming from a parliament where you are actually a minority and being in a courageous fight against this anti-Israeli attitude? What is your feeling? Can you win the battle or Europe is lost?
Well, thank you for having me to start with. I come from a country, Belgium, and I feel actually much more at home nowadays here in Israel than in my own country, you know. And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. I'm fighting in the Belgian parliament, but also outside the parliament as an author of this book about Islamization. I'm fighting an existential fight, just like Israel, against Islamization because, ladies and gentlemen, demography is destiny. That is the truth that we should repeat constantly because still there are not enough people who understand that, and the situation now is very simple. Muslims come in massive amounts, in big amounts, and the Jews, they get more and more oppressed, they get more and more harassed. In the city where I'm a city councillor, the city of Antwerp, where we have a big Jewish community, 20,000 Jews, every day now we have an anti-Semitic incident going from spitting to verbally attacking to physically attacking, and mostly, not always, but most of the times the perpetrators are Muslims. And it's being said already, that is the amazing difference, of course, the great difference between the East or Central Europe and the Western European countries like Belgium. So Europe is going into two directions. It's going into the good direction with countries like Hungary, which I look up to enormously, and it's going, yes, you can keep applauding Hungary.
No, you are unique, actually.
And it's going into this horrible direction, France, the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, in which not only the Jewish population gets more and more kicked out, actually, because of progressivism, wokeism, and Islamization, but also the attitude towards Israel, gets worse, of course, because all these politicians, they want to be nice and do good for their Muslim voters, and for being that, they criticize Israel in the most horrible and anti-Semitic way.
Still, the right is growing in Europe. Still, there is a better sensation nowadays. Italy, Austria, Germany, Belgium in the future, maybe Holland, they are all going to the right. So, I mean, is there a hope? This is something that I am asking to you all.
Yeah, of course.
A quick answer, and then I pass to... No, you can answer to this quickly. Is there a hope about that? Is Europe going to change? This is the real question.
Well, there is hope, because parties like mine and also the Freedom Party of Geert Wilders, for example, we are growing, but the question is always, are we growing enough to have the impact that we should have to radically change policy and to follow the footsteps of, for example, Hungary? And on that, I'm quite skeptical, moreover, because we are facing an enemy that is much bigger than the leftist parties in our own country. It's not just demography, it's also the European Union, it's also the United Nations. That is a big enemy and very difficult to fight.
Okay. Well, Richard, I think many of you know Richard Kemp because it's a long time that he's standing with enormous courage on our side, and on the most difficult side, he's always standing on the side of our army. And for this, I really thank you very much personally, and I think that this comes from all of our heart. Now, Europe is discussing as never about an army. They want an army, they don't know how to do it, day after day there is this discussion. Do you think that this can bring Europe to understand better the problem of a war? Do they feel closer to us when they discuss this, or this cannot be of any help in the relationship with Israel?
Fiamma told me earlier on that she was pleased to have a panel with 3 of us goyim. She didn't use that word. And I just asked whether she was anti-Semitic. She was so keen on having non-Jews.
It's a good suggestion, you know.
But, the European countries, when I talk about Europe now, I'm talking about Western Europe. We're not talking about the whole of the European countries. Europe is happy to lecture Israel as if it was a little child, while at the same time, it's supporting terrorism. European countries enabled the 7th of October by the empowerment and the appeasement of Hamas that they've been so active in for the last goodness knows how many decades. At the same time, they have been, rather than pressing Israel or pressing Egypt to allow refugees from Gaza to go into their country to safety, They have been objecting to it, even since President Trump suggested that option. They've objected to it. It's extraordinary, absolutely beyond... and in fact, the reality is that by suggesting it, it shows they, as Hamas are, want to use Gazan civilians as human shields. That's their purpose, to stop Israel achieving its objectives. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that Europe is broken, the EU is broken, NATO is defeated in Ukraine. We've got a situation where in European countries, while in Israel something like 9% of GDP is allocated to defence last year, normally it's around 5%, most European countries struggle to get anywhere near the 2% they're objected to spend on GDP. Even if they had the weapons that they need, do they have the political will, do they have the cultural capability of actually fighting a war? In Britain, there was a survey done a couple of months ago which suggested that only or less than 11% of young people aged 18 to 27 would fight for their country, an extraordinarily low number. And you just look at the contrast with Israel. We're talking about, and I don't blame these young people in a way, because they don't have the leadership that they need. There is no Churchill in Europe, though you've got a Churchill here, and we heard from him last night.
So is there room today, is there a place to give to Europe a new hint about considering Israel a model and not...
They should, and let me, can you show me a photograph? Have you got it available? No?
Photograph of what?
Ah, okay. The opposite of the orange-haired, keffiyeh-wearing young people protesting on the streets in Britain is this guy. He symbolises Israeli youth to me. He was shot 3 times. He was shot in the leg, he was shot in the head, and he was shot again in the leg. And what he wanted to do, all he told me he wanted to do, was to get back to the fight. So this is the contrast we have. And my policy advice... The fight that Israel is fighting today is not just a fight for Israel, it's a fight for all of us. And it's not just coming to Europe, it's in Europe now. My policy advice to Europe is 3 words: be like Israel.
Exactly. Miklos, I want to know if you will bring your embassy to Jerusalem. Well, you spoke about that. You promised that. I don't know.
I'm just an analyst. I'm not a politician. I'm not an official decision maker.
You think that it will happen?
Look, what we have seen in the first of all, it's obvious that Hungary itself is a safe haven nowadays for Jews in Europe. Hungary stands, as I mentioned, at every and each in every and each international organization with Israel. There is the withdrawal of Hungary from ICC, and the staunch support also in communication and PR from the Hungarian right towards Israel. We, the Center for Fundamental Rights, we were the very first European, or I think worldwide, the first organization that organized a pro-Israel conference right after the deadly Hamas attack. The conference was on the 9th of October back in 2023. That was the very first in Budapest in Hungary. So I cannot speak in the name of the decision makers, but symbolic gestures are extremely important, I do agree. But what you should know that I mentioned, if there is one country, if there is one political force on the side of the sovereigns which supports Israel in its fight for God, homeland, for family, for protecting its borders, for upholding its statehood, for protecting its families, that is Hungary. That is for sure.
Sam, one of the images that show how unfriendly Europe can be is when your prime minister, he is De Croo, right, was standing in front of Rafah just 2 days after the 7th of October, telling that Israel must not enter in there, and just praying for a ceasefire right away. What were you feeling there? And please explain us how this can be overcome.
Yes, my personal feeling was that I want to run away as fast as possible, away from Belgium and come to Israel or to Hungary, for example. But listen, when it comes to the Middle East and Israel, and also Islam and Judaism, the Jewish people, there are in Belgium two types of politicians. There are politicians who are stupid and unknown. They don't know anything about the Middle East, Israel, or Judaism. They think they know, but they don't know. And there are the politicians, unfortunately, that are anti-Semites. And it is very difficult to combat these two types of politicians because they don't want to see the truth. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to see that Israel is actually a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle state in almost every aspect that we should look up to and that we indeed, Mr. Kemp, should try to copy. Be like Israel. I couldn't agree more with you. That is what we should be. But honestly, I see that a lot of times when I try to show that, it has the opposite effect even. Because that is, of course, what Jew hatred and what anti-Semitism is. It's a jealousy of success. And when Jewish people have success, whether it's with the Nobel Prizes, whether it's with technology, whether it's with their own country, Israel, well, they get hated, unfortunately. But you can trust on me, and I will keep doing everything inside the parliament and outside the parliament to change that, and I hope it will work.
Bravo, molto bravo. I don't know if we have 1 minute time more. I would ask Richard how he sees the future. I mean, do you see a demonstration that will all of this, instead of going with the flags, with the Palestinian flags and shouting from the river to the sea, shouting Israel is our model, do you see a possibility that Europe one day will understand what you're saying since so many years?
I'm very lacking in optimism for Europe, Western Europe, and I'm talking about now. I'm extremely optimistic about Israel's future. I know that Israel is going to come out of this war much stronger than it went into it. It's going to be a more united country, a country more capable of defending itself, and a country, I hope, supported even more than now by the international diaspora. And if Europe can do something to emulate that, then that would be fantastic. But like I said, I'm not optimistic.
Great. I take this as the best conclusion, and I think that all of us are here to say Israel will win, and this is our message from the new Europe that is going to grow since now onward.